I know some might not agree with me, and that's okay. But speaking to what you were saying, is that you said we had something special. We were fighting civil rights together. We were doing X, Y, and Z together. I'm gonna be honest. I think at this point of where the divide is, I think that's what it's gonna take for us to kind of come back together. I think as Black people in general, we come together during atrocities, like when something bad is happening. Like you said, we're fighting for civil rights, we're trying to get out of slavery, we're trying, it just seems we are willing to work together for a cause. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, like, the situation, the environment has been set up where it forced us to be together. Like, men were not making enough money to, Black men at that time was not making enough money to take care of a family on their own. So it put women in a position, Black women in positions that they had to work too. So they were kind of forced to be together, because living separately, neither one of them would do okay for the most part. So those conditions kind of put them in a position to work together. Then you get into the civil rights movement. Again, both of them were lacking, in terms of having access, being able to be considered like a full-fledged citizen. So they had a goal and shift that they had to work together, because neither one of them were benefiting on their own. I think what has transitioned now is that women can say, like, oh, I could do bad by myself, right? Because now they have, the financial resources to be able to kind of live on their own. So the condition for them to set up to kind of be pushed put together, because they don't have a common goal now, is why I think part of why we are not coming together. And I think if something happens that forces, our hand, the conditions are set up where we have to work together, I think we'll both begin to see the benefit of us working in harmony with each other, because the results show that we did better together than we did apart.
So I hear you mistaken, and maybe I should have been more thorough in my examples, because it's not just in trauma that Black men and Black women have forged like forces together, right? When we look at Black Wall Street, when we look at Seneca Village, when we look at all of those towns that were flooded in the south of the US, Black men and Black women have partnered together outside of trauma and pooled their resources to create prospering communities, regardless of what the economics look like on a grander scale.
That's what I was gonna say, because they would
Yeah,
be considered a
it's
sub
not,
community.
right.
Yeah.
It's not just in situations of like traumatic experiences where you're forced to like trauma bond, right? There are very positive examples of the way that Black men and Black women have collaborated, and not just specific to the US, like across the world, right? Black men and Black women have collaborated to create just absolutely beautiful, historically changing things, right?
Mm-hmm. Policy
So
work. Yep.
yeah,
I know, but the laws were still set up, even though it was part. I
I
get what
understand.
you're saying,
I
but the laws and conditions were still
Yes,
set up.
yes, I
Mhm.
100% agree with you, because those things have always managed to be destroyed, regardless of like prospering in spite of conditions, right? Because Black people are absolutely resilient human beings.
Agreed.
They like prospering in spite of the conditions that are laid out for them. They've still managed to make it happen. However, I think this buy-in into feminism has created this rift where there's no longer that trust. There's no longer that trust between Black women and Black men that we can do that again. We can build this again. We can do things for ourselves together again. Now it's all of a sudden, well, Black women are too aggressive. Black men are too feminine. Black women are too combative, or like they focus too much on their education. Black women are, or Black men aren't achieving enough. Like it's become so combative internally that we're no longer able to create the same infrastructures that we've done time and time again historically, regardless of the time period, regardless of the expectations, regardless of the laws, right? Because from our hair to our genetics to our circumstances, regardless of the time in history, Black people have performed feats that other races, ethnicities, civilizations have struggled to maintain, to upkeep, right? But there's this insane divide that's happened right now where something is infiltrated, where like Black men and Black women refuse to work together. Like it has become like this I would rather go elsewhere than to work within.
That's why I said it has to be a condition
Whoa.
set up to push them together.
Red pill. Look, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. The ladies left the men. Like, let us be very clear on this. Men didn't leave the women first. The women left the men.
What if
And
they
this was
said the
during,
men let them go?
and I'm talking US and we're talking historically. No, when we go back into war, like we gotta go back. We gotta go into the World War I and World War II when they started making the welfare laws. Like there's so much that happened in that when Black women left the Black men. White
That's not
women didn't.
true.
That
Black
is
women,
exactly true. No,
no.
and there's actually
When I
I'm gonna
did
pull
the
it up. I will
research,
pull it up for you. I will
well,
pull it
make
up
sure
for you.
you
As a
pull
matter of
this
fact, hold
research
on,
up too, because
hold
it
on.
initially
Can
said
I
that
finish
Black
first?
women
Can
didn't
I
even
finish?
have access.
Miss
Go ahead. I'm
Taken, can I
sorry.
finish first?
Go ahead.
And I will pull up
I'm
put it
sorry.
in the back chat for you. Um, where white women weren't weren't stopped accepting the money at a very different rate than white women once the men came home from war. They said, "No, I'm not giving this up." And the Black women said, "Well, shit, I'm doing better now than I was before he left." That is what happened. Black women left the Black man. And now, fast forward to 2023, there's been so much that's happened in between, and I'm not going to go through the entire history of it. Black men are now saying, you know what? Y'all are out. Now I'm going to go somewhere else and find somebody else. Now I'm going to look across the ponds and see what else I can find for a more feminine woman. Now Black women have taken on a role that is quite a masculine role, and especially as it pertains to relationships and bringing their work home because of the role they have to play at work. Then when you couple that with the higher education, expecting higher jobs, expecting a different type of man, like this, the shit got out of control. And again, I will pull that up and I'm gonna let you rebut as I pull that up.
No, I'll say this really quick, and then you can fit. What I was going to say is that initially, when you're talking about welfare access, Black women were not allowed access to that welfare that you were talking about. Only white women were. That changed later on down the line. That was just a clarification that I wanted to make. So we didn't even have the option of being able to have welfare when it first came out. But go ahead, Inez.
Yeah, so I wanted to add to that. So after World War One was still Jim Crow era. Black women were not leaving Black men at that point. It wasn't until mass incarceration where Black women were starting to feel abandoned. That idea of like the single mother household, we were calling them fatherless households at that point, right? Um, Women raising children, both boys and girls, that started to perpetuate this system that created this divide that created a cycle, right? This divide of like more effeminate men, more masculine women really did come from that. It wasn't World War One, it wasn't World War Two. Like communities were still thriving. Yes, there was division. Yes, there was infiltration. Yes, there were issues. Nobody is giving the illusion that those communities were perfect by any sort of happenstance, but this idea of like this separation didn't really happen until a lot farther on, right? Whether it was the North or the South, because the conditions were different depending on where you were, it wasn't the same. It was not World War One. It was not World War Two. That you're on mute. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to rebut. But yeah, I just wanted to add that, like, I think your timeline and what you're talking about is significantly different than like when things actually started to delineate.